If you like this story, hit the like button and please subscribe. I will try to make a new story each week. Help support the channel with Patreon. Monster Hunter John. Story number 3, All That Slithers. I was rested up and over my Louisiana vacation. At least that's how a few thought of it at MRE headquarters. It wasn't a vacation. A werewolf and a Sasquatch that saved my butt. Yeah, some vacation. I did have a few questions for Kent concerning MRE and himself. I found out a few things in talking with Bill, my partner in Louisiana, that made me wonder about how things were in the outfit I had decided to join. So, here I sat in Kent's office, waiting for him to get off the phone so I could ask him some questions. Once he hung up, he looked at me expectantly. Kent, I started, tell me how things lay with the company. I mean, Bill seemed to put you fairly high up in the chain around here. Plus, this place seems to be the clearinghouse for everything going on in several states. What's up? Kent leaned back in his chair. To answer that is to tell a sad tale for the agency. First, there are now 4 divisions of MRE, used to be 5. South, North, Midwest, and West Coast North and South. Now, therefore, since the South joined the North. Oh, there are worldwide divisions too. About 3 years ago, we discovered a huge collection of vampires in Columbus, Ohio. We gathered 54 agents and investigators together, as well as the division head, Dale Allen. They all went in and discovered that it wasn't just vampires. Some werewolves had joined them. All said, the vampires and werewolves were killed, but so were 42 agents, including Dale. 8 were severely injured. The remaining counted themselves very lucky. I was one of those few. He fell silent as he remembered the event. Finally, he spoke again. Since then, we have been severely short in our area. We had to combine the north and south areas for coverage. We're slowly building back up. This is why I took you in and then had to send you to Louisiana. We were just short on people. The right kind of people. I was given the job of department head and have been doing my best. That explains a lot, I said, deciding that more details I did not need to dig up. I couldn't even begin to think of that many people being killed. This made me see Kent in a new light, that was for sure. Enough about that, Kent said, snapping himself to the present. We have some disturbing reports out of New York. Well, the suburbs, actually. Seems we have some missing dogs, an attack on a jogger by something, and a couple of missing homeless people. Interested. Missing dogs? That could be anything. Missing homeless? I don't know much about that, but it would seem to me that homeless people move around. What about the attack on the jogger? I agree. Most of this could be explained as normal. The jogger? She claimed to have been attacked by a giant lizard. It ran on 2 legs and then 4, so she thinks. Attacked her as she was running, scratched up her leg, but she kicked back and it went running. That's it, I said. Could have been a dog or a wild cat or something. True, except that New York is one of the places that houses a good-sized community of sauroids. I sat a bit straighter. What in the hell is a sauroid? It's a race of, well, for all intensive purposes, semi-intelligent lizards. Yes, I snapped my fingers. I remember that in your briefing. Kent nodded right. We are not sure where they come from. From the ones we have killed, their DNA is unknown. Since we have no dinosaur DNA, they could be what is left of the dinosaurs, or they could be remnants of an alien species. They're semi-intelligent, so the alien part is conjecture, but then so is the dinosaur connection. Whatever, they live in the caverns of most of the world and the sewers of bigger cities. They are intelligent enough to realize that we humans are in charge and pretty much leave us alone. I do have an investigator in New York that has met and gained a truce with the local monarch of the Saurian tribe. I want to send you up to help out. That is, if you're interested. Sure, my chance to see the big city, I replied. Tomorrow. You may want to check out the 44 again. Maybe one of the ARs too. Lizard hide. is somewhat bullet resistant except in the throat area. He rummaged through his desk and pulled out a sticky note and wrote something down. Here's the address for the local MRE office. Your contact is Betty James. Betty? A woman then? Yes. She's in charge of Asorians. Seems they are matriarchal, led by a female. They may not care too much for humans, but they will only deal with females. They consider males to be fairly non-intelligent, good for guards and mating, that's it. Not much different from us. I tried to interject some humor. Don't laugh it off, John. They are quite serious about it. You'll find out. That put a cool chill of seriousness in me. I nodded and walked out. I made my way down to the armory, checked out the pistol I had taken to Louisiana and an AR. One would think that we would have some special weapons beyond the ordinary, but we didn't. Some special ammunition, perhaps, silver bullets, hollow points packed with explosive, that type of thing. But no lasers, plasma guns, or other weapons made popular by science fiction. For days later, I pulled into a small 4-story office building in the outskirts of New York. The big city lay in the distance, big skyscrapers almost touching the sky. I walked inside and flashed my ID to the man at the front desk. Hi, I'm here to see Betty James. The man nodded and pushed a button on the telephone. Yes, came over the speaker. You have a visitor from the home office. Good, I'll be there in a minute. If you'll have a seat, Ms. James will be with you in a moment. I nodded and had a seat. It wasn't long before the door opened and Ms. James came out. She was tall, almost 6 feet, close-cropped sandy brown hair, pretty face. She had a professional look to her, black jeans, blue shirt. I stood up and reached my hand out. Ms. James? Betty, please. You're John from the home office. Yes. I just found out it was the home office the other day. She nodded, yes. That was a sad day. Well, come in and let me fill you in on what we have and what we don't have. I followed her into a large office, twice the size of Kent's. This one had a meeting table for 6. She motioned for me to sit down as she grabbed a file off her desk and sat next to me. She handed me the file. By the way, good work in Louisiana. I understand that was only your second mission with us. I responded as I opened the file. I do have to give a lot of credit to the local Sasquatch, though. Yes, that's what's interesting. We have never had such an encounter before. I nodded. Guess I was the talk of the MRE. I opened the file and found police reports and some pictures. The reports were about missing dogs, pets. They had gone out for the night, never came back. One owner says he waited at the door. The dog sniffed around some car, but then he heard a quick whine of pain. He grabbed a flashlight and went looking, and all he found was some fur, the dog's collar and blood. Sounded like a bobcat or mountain lion. But in New York? The next was a report from the jogger, Susan Adams. She was rushed to the ER due to several lacerations on her leg. She said she was jogging when something came out between 2 cars and attacked her. She couldn't really describe what scratched her leg as it happened so fast. She said it was big, 4 to 5 feet tall, low to the ground, may have had scales, she wasn't sure, or tail, and it ran on 2 legs and 4 legs. Again, sounded like a big cat. Maybe somebody's panther got loose. Last were a series of missing persons, all from a Pastor David Jones. He worked in the least favorite part of town and dealt with mostly homeless people that needed religion. He reported that 3 of his regulars had gone missing without a trace. Since these were regular visitors, he filed a report. Over a week and a half, Ron Lester, Frank Goins, and Vic Franklin were gone. I put the folder down and thought on it for a while. The cases as individuals seemed like some mysterious big cat. Even a witness could be mistaken. The 3 men, the same thing, and cats were known to drag their victims off to feed on them later, but they didn't disappear. Even if the body were stuffed in a tree somewhere, the police would have spotted it. I know what you're thinking, Betty said. Someone has a panther loose. Yes, that's exactly it. Well, the answer is probably not. We have not seen it during the day, and even at night, our patrols would have spotted a cat. They're not the best at hiding. But you think it could be one of these sauroids things? We're going to find out in another few hours. I have a meeting with their queen. You what? How did you manage that? I've known her for some time. We will meet briefly and see what's going on and work from there. You're not going alone, I hope. No, of course not. You're welcome to come as long as you follow my rules. I shrugged, sure. She stood up and gathered the folder. One important thing is that you do not speak or do anything unless I say so. I mean that, she said authoritatively. Say nothing. Do nothing. Okay, I get it. They're matriarchal. Like you wouldn't believe. Now, do you have a place to stay? No. I answered. Usually Kent takes care of that for me. 3 days on the road to get here was easy. Finding a decent place at a discount price isn't. You can stay here, she said. The upper 2 floors are rooms. Not many use them these days, and they're not the Astoria, but they'll do. She started to continue when her phone rang. She answered it and spoke a little while before hanging up. She looked at the clock on the wall. We have time to go and check with Pastor Jones. He has reported 2 more missing. That was the city police letting me know. You were close with the police then? From what I gathered. They are under us, but don't like it too well. She cracked half a smile. Here, they tolerate us. I suppose it's the same for everyone that's not NYPD. We have a job to do that has to be kept hushed, all undercover, all secret. Some don't care for that. Some don't like it when we take charge. She shrugged. Too bad. Part of the job. She opened her desk out, brought out a pistol that looked similar to my 9mm. She put on and then grabbed a fashionable jacket from coat hanger and put it on. The pistol was well hidden. Are you packing? I have my backup on my ankle, but my 9 is in the car along with Kent's suggest of a 44 mag and an AR. Okay, you just need the 9mm for now. When we get back, you can load up for Lizard. She said the Swearians don't expect us to walk in unarmed, so we don't have to hide anything. We walked out. I stopped by car and put on my 9mm. We got in her red Toyota Celica and pulled out. This wasn't a new car, a few years old in fact, but I figure it was all part of the cover, like Bill and his truck. What do you know about this pastor? I asked, try to memorize the many streets she went down. He's a bit odd. He's a good man. I don't mean anything, but yet he just has something about him. He seems to think he was called to do what he does. Maybe he was, I don't know. He had a free church every Wednesday evening and Sunday afternoon. His congregation is mostly homeless people. They come in from blocks away, not to hear his sermon necessarily, but to get a free handout, sandwich, soup, soda, whatever he has. That made me think for a minute. He's not a vampire, is he? No, good guess though. We've researched him pretty well. If he's up to no good, he's keeping a damn good secret. No, we think he's what he is, a pastor in a very poor flock. Soon we parked along the street in front of a run-down building. It had seen better days, but seemed to be solid enough. I looked around as we got out. This was definitely the seedy side of town. Empty apartment buildings, some just run down. One had crumbled to the ground. There were a few curious bystanders milling about, but nothing threatening. Vetter knocked on a very solid sounding wooden door. After a minute, the door creaked open and a man in his 50s stood in the doorframe. He had jeans and a fairly clean dress shirt. Yes? He asked, and then he recognized Betty. Oh, Miss James. Please do come in and bless you. She nodded and let me come in behind. This is my temporary partner, John. He nodded and smiled broadly. A disciple. Bless you, my son. Come this way. He led us to an office that, like the outside, had seen better days. He motioned us to sit in two wooden chairs, neither matched the other. He sat behind what appeared to be an old wooden teacher's desk. Two more of my flock has disappeared. God save them from harm. Gabby, I don't know if he had a last name. We just called him Gabby, vanished sometime after Sunday service. Winston was the next to go. He did not show up for Wednesday night service. I went down to check on them and found nothing. You want to check on them? I asked. Then you know where they live? Oh, yes. About 2 blocks down is a run-down building. Go around toward the back, and a few have set up a makeshift camp. Steve Brown is the only one left out of that bunch. He was still there yesterday, but was scared. He said that demons took the other two. He said he was coming down here for the night, but he hasn't shown up yet. I could tell that the man was nervous, the way he said demons. Betty jumped in. John and I will go down and have a look. If we see Steve, we'll bring him back with us. The pastor stood up. Bless you, sister. May God watch over you both. She nodded and led the way out, with the pastor stopping at the door and watching us walk. After about 50 feet, she asked, "What do you think about the pastor now?" Not a vampire, at least not one like I've had described to me. He's lacking, I don't know, the arrogance. Yes, that's it. He seemed genuinely concerned. Are the police not doing anything? She laughed slightly. What can they do? Take down what he says. Go look and find nothing. What do you expect them to do? To them, a homeless person is a homeless person that's drunk, on drugs, crazy, or a combination. And that's about right. Unless someone saw something and is willing to talk, there's not much we can do either. We passed few people, some sitting on the steps of buildings, others just wandering around with nowhere to go. I hated to see people living like this, forgotten by society. We had enough food to feed everyone. We could even build shelters, but we didn't. I was suddenly ashamed to be in a country that could easily take care of its own, but didn't. A partially collapsed building came up to our right, and Betty made a nod. This is it. Let's go around back and see what we see. The lot next to this one was empty, so going around back wasn't difficult. The wall had also collapsed, but enough had remained to the bottom floor that 3 walls and part of the back wall still stood. It was open to the sky, but upon entering through a gap in the brick, we could see some tarp thrown up to form a roof. There were some sleeping bags and blankets on the ground, where people had stacked wood to get them off the ground. Not a place I would ever want to live in, but better than being exposed in the open. Hello, Betty called. Anyone here? She called some more as we entered, but received no answer. Guess this Steve Brown is gone too, I said as I looked around. Betty said nothing. She brought out a small flashlight and began to look around. I let her look. She knew far better than I would have looked for. It did not take long. Over here, she called. Look at the bedroll. I looked but saw nothing special. See how it looks like something was dragged off of it? And there's some blood. She had better eyes than I did, but I did not miss what was scrawled on the bricks. There, look, on the brick wall, someone had used a nail or something to scratch a drawing into the brick. It was something coming from a small line drawn on the ground. The figure was hunched and had 2 legs and a tail. Betty took out her cell phone and snapped a few pictures. Come on, she said, going back out the hole. She then went to the street and found what she wanted, a manhole cover a couple of yards away. She bent down to look at it carefully. See, scratches. Something has been lifting this lid. She rubbed her finger on the edge and came back with a brownish stain. Blood. We stopped by the church before leaving, letting the pastor know that we did not find anyone at the building. The pastor was to call us, should Steve show up. We then went back to the office. Betty showed me the lounge and told me where my room was while she went to her office to do some quick work. I decided to forego the room for now and went to the lounge. The lounge room was big. It seems that this place was designed for several people, but was barely full now. The lounge could easily handle some 20 people. I guess that the people that had worked here were also the ones that had belonged to the ill-fated mission that Ken had been telling me about. Must have been one hell of a fight. Werewolves and vampires, Ken had said. I couldn't imagine it. Betty came by after about 10 minutes and motioned me back to her office. What we found seems to indicate the presence of saurians or werewolves. I strongly lean towards the saurians. Werewolves would have made more of a mess of things. Besides, indications are that they've been using the sewer system. A werewolf would not do that. A vampire might, but again, I don't think it's one of them. She looked at her clock. It's about time we started heading out. She stood up. We'll meet the others in the armory. I only nodded as she left the office and headed for a back room. She hit her with me close behind, and I stopped in my tracks. I thought Kent's armory was something. This looked like they were ready for a world war to break out. There were even a few things here that I had no clue what they were. She walked over to a small group of people, 2 women and 1 man, all dressed like we were getting ready for a safari. John, this is Sheila, Houston, and Bailey. This is my Saurian team, she then added, and pretty much everything else that I need. We shook hands as we greeted each other. Sheila was a petite brunette, but had the looks of someone I certainly did not want to get into a fight with. She may have been small, but I saw some well-developed muscles. Houston was about as tall as I was, but had the build of a football player. Bailey was tall and thin, blonde hair tied into a ponytail. She looked like she could have been a model or kicked ass if she wanted. All right, here's tonight's rundown, Betty said, drawing our attention. We're going to meet Queen Lavis and see if any of her people have gone rogue. I don't expect any problems, so we act as normal and play it by ear. She turned to me. That means that you and Houston take your ARs out and act as guards. Nothing else. You don't do or say anything unless I tell you. I nodded my head in understanding. Good. You have gear in your car. I nodded and she continued. Okay, we'll pick you up in front. I want to get my equipment and heard a car pull up. I was surprised when I saw that it was a van. Well, with all of our equipment, there would not have been much room in a car. I loaded in and off we went. Again, streets and buildings blurred by. It wasn't that she was driving fast. It was just because of all the streets that we turned down, I was lost. Finally, she pulled past some lighted sawhorses that had been marked with NYPD stop. She then turned into what looked like a park, trees, a good-sized lake, and some grassy areas. We pulled into an empty parking lot. The barriers had been put up to keep people out of the area, apparently. As we climbed out, it seemed somewhat disquieting, a park as big as this and no one else around. Houston didn't seem bothered as he brought his AR out. The ladies wore pistols, but they were small, 9mm most likely. I wondered why they didn't pack anything bigger since Ken suggested I take the .44. Then I noticed that Houston wore a big sidearm. He and I were acting as guards. The ladies didn't need anything bigger. Or so I hoped. We walked over to what looked like a retaining wall with a huge steel grate. We switched on our flashlights as Houston lifted the grate up, which I expected to be locked, but wasn't. We entered what I can only describe as a man-made cave. The grate did not match the interior. It was 6 feet tall. The interior was a good 10. A concrete tunnel lay before us and stretched out into the dark. There was shallow water at the base that slowly flowed out and into the lake beyond. There were no sounds other than the echoes of our footsteps as we slowly went forward. I glanced at Houston as he formed up on my side. He held his AR upward at the elbow, and I did the same. For our position, I gathered. Betty was in the forefront, the two women at either side of her. Into the dark we went. We passed side tunnels, slightly smaller than the one we were in. After several hundred yards, Betty led us, though, one of the side tunnels. Houston and I had to bend down, as the tunnel size was probably 6 feet. Then a light from the other end could be seen. It began to get brighter as we moved forward, and soon the flashlights were not needed and turned off. After another 100 or so yards, the tunnel suddenly opened into what I thought was a large cavern, but upon closer inspection, looked like a huge basement. The walls were flat and smooth like an undercar garage that I had once seen in a movie. Support pillars stood every 10 or 12 feet. The light was provided by lamps stretched out every 20 feet or so. It was not daylight bright, but I could see good enough. There were close to 30 of the Saurians standing at a loose formation. Some had tunics like uniforms, others had nothing. To me, they looked like a muscular iguana that had a humanoid form and 3-foot long tail and stood upright, more or less to about 5 feet. Looking more intently, I saw that their features were not as rough as an iguana, but that was the best I could describe them. The ones with tunics had spears, bows and arrows, and lethal-looking pole axes. They were made from road signs, metal projections, the kind of stuff you would imagine people building after Holocaust. Betty spoke up loudly. Queen Lawdass, Osaka Wussenfat. The group formed a line, and two of the tunic lizard folk motioned us ahead. 30 suddenly became 50, then 60. As we walked forward, I lost count. I'm quite sure that there were some in the back, hidden from view. The group stopped and formed a loose circle around a bigger lizard sitting in a chair of sort, a throne, I suppose. It was easily 6 feet tall, dressed in a robe of dull red and a golden scepter in its left hand. Betty stepped forward and bowed. Queen Lawless, I greet you. The lizard bowed her head slightly. Bet Ty James. Honored I am. Why come? I was shocked that the thing could speak English. Semi-intelligent indeed. Betty spoke. Come to see about clan. Claims made that surface world attacks by your people. What claims? People taken. Runner attacked. I'll point to your people. She looked around at those gathered. Made some hisses and was hissed back. None of my clan. Again Betty bowed. Then, I thank you, Queen Lawdass. She turned to leave, but I mistakenly said the word, but. Betty ran to me in an instant and slapped me so hard that I fell down. She wasn't play acting. You will be silent. Betty pointed a finger at me, and I could see her rage. I will deal with you later. She turned to face the queen. My apologies. New male. Has not learned yet. Again she bowed and turned around. She kicked at me. Get up and move, or I will give you far worse. Stunned as I was, I sheepishly got up and began to move back the way we came. It wasn't until we were at the van that she spoke quietly to me. Didn't hurt you too bad, did I? My jaw ached, but I shook my head. Sorry, I forgot. She nodded, I know. I had to do all of that to save you and to save face. Had you said anything more, they probably would have killed you. That's why I waited until now to speak. Never forget, these are matriarchal people. Strong matriarchal people. We loaded up into the van, but she claimed that none of her clans was responsible. I said, either she is lying or we need to rethink what we have. She didn't lie. Bailey said frankly, they don't know how to. They may be many things, but dishonest they're not. Besides, there are a few ways that we can interpret what she said, Betty replied. Just because they're not in her clan now, doesn't mean that they weren't. When Asaurians kick out a member or members, they're not considered to be in their clan anymore. So, she may have been telling the truth, just not all the truth. Or this could be another group moving into the area. There's a lot of them, I said. About what, Bailey? 200 something? She nodded. Last count was 232, all living with a 5-mile range. And what do they eat? I asked. That's a lot of mouths to feed. Mostly food waste, Sheila replied. You'd be surprised how much food gets tossed away at the end of the night by the various restaurants. Most of the time, they eat better than I do. But new clan or exiles would not have access. They have to get food wherever they can, Betty added. If this is part of Lavas's group that were exiled, it could be because they were tired of eating scraps and wanted to hunt. They used to hunt people and animals a long time ago before we made them realize the mistake of doing that. War, I said as we drove off. Yes, Sheila answered, a long time ago. When all of this was just a few buildings and caves. New York, the city, didn't exist then. But the sauroids and humans did. At first, the war was fairly even, but as more people came here armed with guns, which the Saurians never figure out how to use, they began to lose. They made a deal to keep to themselves, and it has remained ever since. So what now? I asked. We go back to headquarters, get something to eat, a little rest, and then head for Pastor Jones' area and set up a trap for our visitors. They may not show up tonight, or they might. But one thing is certain, they will show sooner or later. We pulled into HQ and went inside. While Sheila, Houston, and Bailey went toward the back, Betty pulled me off to the side. John, you don't have to go with us. I've more than enough support. I think she was still trying to make up for the smackdown she had given me. No, I said, I'll see this through with you. That's what I was sent for after all. Besides, I like to get to the bottom of this. Betty smiled a little. Okay, your jaw still hurt. I laughed a little. No, it's okay. You did what you had to do, my mistake. She smiled and lightly smacked me, and one you won't forget. We both went to the lounge where the other three had gathered. Houston was on the telephone. Pizza okay with everyone? We all nodded. Betty excused herself to her office while the rest of us sat about in the lounge and going through drinks in the refrigerator. No beer, just soda. Oh well, it had been a while and I was a bit beer thirsty. I sat down on the couch and thought about this wild adventure I'd been on. A couple of days' travel, a few off, but seems like I was on the go most of the time. First, vampire, then a werewolf with a Sasquatch tossed in, and now, New York and lizard people. I wonder what I'd signed up for. Then, I thought about how much had been covered up. How many New Yorkers knew about this clan of lizard people living beneath their feet? A few police, but not many else. And werewolves, vampires, whatever else was out there. Next thing I'd know, some little green men would deliver the pizza. It took about 15 minutes for pizza to arrive. Betty had come back by then, having filed updates on what had happened so far and what we were planning. We pretty much ate in silence and then got down to details after the last slice went down. All right, Betty began. John and I were already out there earlier. There's a collapsed building. The back is still standing, more or less. That is where 5 people have gone missing. I found some blood on one blanket and this scratched in the wall. She threw a copy of what she had taken a photo of while we're there. The manhole cover nearby had some scratches and dry blood. It is my theory that these creatures used the manhole cover for egress. The men, they probably killed and then dragged off in the night while everyone was asleep. There's an empty lot next door, abandoned buildings on the sides. Looks like we can set up a crossfire if we need to. There's no telling how many of these things there are, but probably no more than 3 or 4, Betty said, or They would take more people. Everyone nodded that they understood. So we'll set Bailey in the junker across from the manhole. Houston and Sheila take up position in the collapse part. You should not be a problem finding some place. You two have ARs, Bailey with a rifle. John and I will sit inside with a small fire going. Then we wait. And then I asked, are we shooting to kill, to wound, trying to capture them? John, Houston answered, we don't play games. We shoot to kill. We went back out, except Bailey, who had went to the back of the building. She was supposed to be in the junker. I wondered what that meant until I heard a car coming. The old Oldsmobile looked like something picked off the street. 3 paint jobs. The back window had been broken and was taped over in black plastic. Some dents. Half a fender was bent out of shape. The perfect disguise. The rest have loaded up in the van, and we headed for the pastor's church, Bailey bringing up the rear as she followed. We parked about halfway down. Betty had motioned for Bailey to continue on and park on the side of the road. We carried our guns, Sheila and Houston each with an AR, Betty with her 9, and I with my 44. Each of us was handed a small headset radio. Betty was carrying some folded up material as we headed down the road. I was going to ask her about it, but decided to wait. We managed to get down the street, just as Bailey pulled her car around and parked on the opposite side of the street, looking over the manhole cover. I saw Bailey through the front window as she crawled over the seat and set up. How is she going to see anything in there? I asked again, noting that the back window was taped up black plastic. I couldn't see anything through it. There's a small camera in the side of the window, Betty replied, hooked up to a monitor inside. She'll be able to see better than us. The black plastic is a special one-way film. You see only black. On her side, she can see a slightly darkened view. The film also allows her to shoot without a problem. Houston and Sheila looked around the side of the building, then nodded that they found a place as they crept in. Within a minute, they were gone from sight. Betty and I continued around the back. She was picking up a few small pieces of wood here and there as we stepped in. She dropped the wood and cloth to turn on a flashlight. I turned mine on and looked around. Nothing had changed since earlier. Okay, let's get a fire going, she said as she picked the wood back up and carrying it to the center of the room. There had been fires there before. There was ash, unburnt wood, and a couple of pieces laying nearby. She set the wood down, pulled something out of her pants pocket, and moved it under the pile of wood. She then produced a small lighter and lit whatever she had put down. It took a moment, but it caught fire and started the other wood blazing. Come on, let's hit some more wood, she said as the room slowly got lighter. Not much, just enough to look like we lit a fire to cook by and shed some light. It took only a few minutes. She next dug out a small can and opened it. She sat it next to the fire and began to smell beans of some sort. Dinner's about to get overcooked, I'm afraid, she said in my wonderment. Then I realized that this was all a setup for our guests. She went back and picked up the cloth. Over here, she said quietly as she walked to a back corner. I followed. She unfolded the cloth that turned out to be about the size of a full-sized bed sheet. Carbon fiber, scratch and puncture proof. Hopefully it will protect you long enough to shoot one. Bait. Again, I was bait. And where will you be? Right back here, out of sight and hopefully smell. Saurians have decent night vision, but they have an even better sense of smell. I hope the beans cover up any odors. That's why we can't use a dummy for bait. They'd smell it right away. I nodded. Betty wasn't done yet. John, don't be fooled by them. You blow one away if it gets too curious. We don't take chances. You're bait, but have that 44 out and show them you have one hell of a hook. I'll be right here, but I won't do anything until you do. That was reassuring. Even though I have yet to see her shoot, I did not doubt that she was a crack shot. Thanks, Betty. She smiled, just hunker down. I don't think anything will happen for another few hours. In another instant, she was gone. Even with the fire, she seemed to vanish into the shadows, leaving me in a protective blanket, all alone in the night. It seemed like hours went by, bored as I was, but the adrenaline still feeding the system in anticipation. There came a crackle in my ear. Manhole has moved. I waited. It was Bailey in the car. 3 no forward targets. Lizards, hiding behind cars. Cover still open. Sniffing air. Headed to Betty. Out. I cover myself up more and had my 44 ready in a firing position. Unlike Charlie the werewolf, I was ready for this one. For long moments, I listened to silence. If they were already inside, they were silent. Then I heard the slightest of sounds. Something had moved the can of beans. Not much. In fact, I doubt I would have noticed except for the absolute silence. Another few minutes passed, then I felt a presence. Something was touching my cover. It was pulled down ever so slightly, but enough for me to open my eyes to just a slit. There was something by my side. It was frozen in place, not moving, not making a sound. Then the cover moved a little more, exposing my face. I could barely see, but what I did see was a mouthful of teeth and not but a couple of feet away. That was close enough. I pulled the sheet away and fired point blank. The lizard that was close to me was bug-eyed with surprise until it fell backward, 3 bullets going through its hide. I looked up and saw 3 more bolting for the opening. One fell as 5 shots rang out behind me. The other 2 vanished out the opening. I heard a cacophony of bullets, and then all was silent. Getting up, I held my pistol at the ready as I moved my flashlight over to the creature I had shot. 3 red holes were in its chest, blood leaking out. I kicked it slightly, but it did not move. Dead. I saw Betty go over to the one she had shot. She also kicked it. Her lizard moved a little, and she shot it 2 more times. Come on, let's see what the others did. We climbed out and saw 2 forms on the ground about midway through the empty lot. Bailey was just coming out to join Sheila in Houston. When Betty and I got to the 2 forms, there was no doubt that they were dead. Betty, Bailey spoke. I looked down the sewer. Didn't see anything, but I thought I heard something. Can't be sure. Okay, she said. At least 4 didn't go anywhere. I'll get a search team tomorrow to check out the area. Call up the dumpster. Tell them we've got 4 bodies to pick up. She nodded and trotted back to her car. The rest of us started back to ours. So, what happens now? I'll have a crew come out tomorrow and investigate the sewer. They go a few hundred yards, see what they see. If there were any more, they won't hang around now. Meanwhile, we go back to HQ and get some sleep. I looked at my watch, 1:35. My nerves weren't quite so high this night as they had been. I would definitely sleep. We got back to headquarters. The group unloaded their weapons in the rear of the building. I headed up to my room. I took off my weapons and managed to half undress and run water over my head when the door knocked. I toweled off and went to the door. Come in. Betty stood at the door frame, a smile on her face. May come in. I nodded and stood aside. She came in and closed the door behind her. Just wanted to say that you did a good job tonight. You couldn't see what the lizards were doing, but it looked like you shot the one just as he was going to get dinner. Coming from you, that's high praise, I said, throwing my towel on the chair. But I noticed it took you several shots to bring yours down. I joked. She smiled. Yes, well, as long as it went down. The rest of the night, I will keep to myself. Let's just say that Betty and I did not get to sleep for another hour or so. The next day, I had said my reluctant goodbyes and was headed back home. When I finally reached the home office and saw Kent, he had some news for me. Seems you impressed the hell out of Betty and the rest, he said with a smile. Good job. The investigators found a few hundred yards down the sewer that a small cavern had been torn out from one of the sidewalls. Inside, they found 12 dog collars and enough bone material for 18 people. That's apparently where the creatures had been staying. Betty said that she went to visit with Queen Lavis again. Apparently, they had gained a new clan member recently, and that he would learn their ways or die. So one survived? Well, not too bad, I suppose. Kent nodded. The Queen will see that the survivor behaves, or she'll have him killed. We still don't know where they came from, but it's settled now. The police are happy. Any people that wonder about the gunfire are being told it was a drive-by. They're satisfied. That just leaves poor Pastor Jones. He still has no idea what happened, but we gave him a nice donation for his church. Yes, that still bothered me. So many homeless. I wanted to help them out somehow, but it was trying to move a mountain. John, provided enough faith, you can move a mountain, Kent said, or a big enough of a lever. Either way, there is not much that one man can do in this particular time. I opened my mouth in shock. How did he know what I was thinking? Kent smiled. I've been to New York too, and I recognized that look. He stood and grasped my shoulder. You're a good man, John. Go take a day or two off. I nodded and headed for the door. Oh, by the way, Kent called. I stopped and turned. Betty said to let you know, if you ever visit New York again, she'd take you sightseeing to some of the better parts of town and arrange for a better place to stay.